Mariana and I are presenting about the humanitarian work. And my name is Sayed, by the way. I have worked in the international humanitarian aid for about 17 years as a emergency relief person. And I've been to most of the mega disasters all over in Asia. And I've been working for more, not the trauma therapy, but more for the construction and reconstruction of schools, hospitals, helping livelihood recovery, all that kind of stuff. And I came to TRE because I've been working in disaster for 17 years. I haven't seen any psychosocial care at a substantial level. And it's very difficult for donors to pay for psychosocial care within emergency aid because it is intangible. You cannot see the progress. You cannot quantify how people are progressing. It is very difficult for donor to fund. I have been working and I distributed 40,000 tents and then built 2,000 schools and we trained 10,000 teachers. It is very easy to count and then report to the donor. So there is a fundamental issue in international donor funding. We cannot do what we feel we need to do. And I've been feeling very restricted to do what I wanted to do in A, so I quit the entire job and I became a full-time TRE person. I've been working in Nepal when the earthquake happened with John, and we are totally working based on very small private fund. But we were doing exactly what we wanted to do and how we believe the work needs to be done, working with the local community and the local counterpart. And there are a lot of lessons learned around that, and we would like to share some of the principles we came up with, what is necessary when we actually do the intervention in a developing country, as well as in our country, there was some of the humanitarian needs. So being human is given, but keeping our humanity is a choice. So I'm very glad now the board, John said yesterday, humanitarian work become one of the 3 pillars in TFA strategy. As we know, how David created TRE was coming completely out of the humanitarian crisis. And what most wonderful about TRE, and that's the reason why I was fascinated to TRE, was it can be used in any countries for anyone, with a low resource countries with really small technical input. So let's remember that TRE was originally made for that. So this is David's quote: "The tremor mechanism in the human body appears to be an essential component of our regulatory system. All humans have a right to have access to this self-regulating mechanism as a means of supporting self-care." So self-care, it's for all. It's for all of us, the frontline workers, emergency assistants, also people out there. I'd like to show you a little clip of picture and videos of the project I'm currently doing in Vietnam, working with the disabled veterans from the war. And I am not the one doing it. The very young Vietnamese girls, not ladies, who I trained, are working with them. You see those 2 women? They are currently my trainees in Vietnam, but they are working with the veterans, the disabled veterans. This gentleman brought up both legs.
Can we have somebody turn the lights down so we can see her slide a little?
Sure.
The lights.
Better? They make a little bit of a difference.
I'm not going to talk detail of this project, and that's not the aim of the presentation, but just wanted to give you a little visual stimulus, what it actually looks like to be the humanitarian at TRE. So she's like 26 years old, you know, like this guy's granddaughter's age. But can you see that social engagement? This girl, this lady, is not a psychologist, they're not body workers, they're not anything, they're community worker, they are community social worker. So they don't have any technical knowledge of brain or nervous system or how to talk or how to listen to the client, nothing, none of that. But they naturally cultivated the social engagement skill through their cultural experience as well as being human. I'd like to show you a video, how she's helping him. Dr. Brian Collier from Seattle. He worked with me in Vietnam. He's a wonderful TRE provider.
Maybe touch his own thigh, put the hands on the thigh.
Teaching self-regulation. See at the background there's the gentleman with different disability doing their own modified exercise at the background. Someone sitting on the chair, someone using the wall, everyone with different disabilities in this room. This person, he was aching from the fountain pain for 30 years and he couldn't get up on his wheelchair without someone carrying him, and it was his emotional shame and burden that he didn't want to ask anyone to carry him, and he didn't go out for 30 years. But since he started practicing TRE, after 8 sessions over 8 weeks, his fountain pain is gone. So he can climb up to the wheelchair by himself and he can start moving around into the villages, the market, and he starts selling the lottery ticket for his own livelihood. So it was changing his life. The guys up there, also there are about 6 or 7 of them, they're chosen for their psychosocial need. They're not severely depressed, but they're depressed enough that there's the well-being in a day-to-day life has been deprived since the war ended, which is nearly 40 years ago, it's a long time. But over the 7-8 sessions of TRE, a lot of them felt huge difference, and one of them even came to Hanoi with us to present his testimony at the government. Anyway. that's not the main story. So, I'm sure you've been really inspired by watching this, and yeah, we have to help people more. And that is a very wonderful intention, and I know all of us in this room are here to help other people. And I love this community. I just want to talk about a little bit of negative side of our good intention. So this is not my quote, but good intention become tragic action when delivered without careful thought. So I've been experiencing so many tragic impact at the community level in developing country because one came with good intention but didn't know how to serve. And actually very naively creating more conflict, worsen someone's situation by making intervention. Intervention means getting involved at the community level. So within international aid, there is a it's a policy called do no harm approach. Your good but naive intention might have destructive impact at the community level. Never underestimate your first interventions. You can actually search do no harm approach, and a lot of international NGOs and the UN have this policy as a part of the project application. What is your measurement? How do you know you're not creating harm in the community? So when we are actually making intervention, or even think about, okay, they need help, what can we do? We need to think about these 5 things. The sustainability, self-empowerment, community empowerment, cultural sensitivity and adaptation, and gender, age, and disability sensitivity and inclusion. I want to go through a little bit quickly because some of you never experienced the humanitarian work, you don't know what they mean, or you might have a different idea what it means. So sustainability means how can our impact can be sustained after we leave the location? Financially, human resource-wise. So the typical thing is, you have a lump sum of money, or you get donated a lump sum of money. Okay, great, let's go there and do something. Wonderful one-off thing. But then after we all go back to our country, what happened to the community? Do they have enough money to continue that action? Or do they have enough knowledge and experience to continue that action? Or is there any other reason that they cannot continue their action? It's like 80%, I don't have actual figures, but from my experience, like billions of money spent on international aid. It's like most of it is unsustainable. After the money ends, when the donor pull out the money, things stop. It's been talking, like last 20 years, 25 years, since I've been studying development studies, the sustainability was an issue, but I have to say it's so difficult to make sure the action is continuing even after we left. Self-empowerment is our intervention is making someone empowered or dispowered. For example, we're coming in and start giving some money to the school. School's been rich for 12 months. They build new things and then they do this and they do that. After we left, they don't have money to continue that process going. Maybe half-built school, there is no roof. There is a toilet, but there is no door. I've seen so many of those, believe it or not. Right? Or you build a wonderful facility for the school with all new mod cons like air conditioning, everything for the school. School didn't have money to buy electricity to run the aircon. I mean, you laugh, it's funny, right? But it's like day-to-day occurrence in my field. Community empowerment. Okay, you're empowering someone individually. How about community as a whole? Typical intervention. You just go and, okay, these women are so deprived. We gotta help these women to be more empowered. And you do a lot of work and a lot of training and give them a lot of opportunity. This group of women become so empowered. But if you look at the bigger picture of the community, these women become too powerful within the community dynamics. There is another disharmony start occurring. Maybe women decided to divorce. Oh, I can't handle this right? So this unintended impact of our direct intervention, we cannot predict everything, but we really have to carefully think before we go in. Cultural sensitivity and adaptation. If we come from West, I'm not Westerner, but I come from Western educated background, sometimes we see, oh, these women are horribly discriminated or disempowered. Okay, these men are really bad, they don't know how to treat women. And then we start having this view of our gender bias and start making intervention. But they have their own code of conduct. They have their own cultural norms and whatever that they manage, you know, among themselves, the gender balance, however it looks like to us. We have to be very careful to make that quick judgment. And adaptation, you know, how can we adapt whatever locally available? You know, if this Vietnamese example, if they cannot do the exercise, how are you going to change it? If in Brazil, maybe Mariano can talk about it a little bit, if they love singing or dancing together to have a social engagement, how can we utilize those values and custom? And gender, age, disability, sensitivity, inclusion, this is also the international humanitarian norm that you cannot just bias one gender. You cannot just help men. You cannot just help women. There are people in between too nowadays that we need to acknowledge. Disability, of course. You know, we talk about the vulnerability and community empowerment, and you don't invite outcast people, disabled people, only because the meeting room is second floor and there's no ramps and lift. It's a very simple dismissal. It's not because our evil intention, but we need to be sensitive enough to think all these things. Anyway, so there are a lot of elements we need to consider when we actually do humanitarian aid. And I'm sure some of you would like to just go out and help people without approval from TFA, and that's all wonderful. But please think these things before you go in. And these are the basic questions before we go in. For whose sake do I do this? It's a good question, right? Of course it's for them, is it really? For what sake do I do this? Who said they need me? Did they ask us to come in? Or we think it's good for them? We have to sell TRE to these people because it's good for them. What do they do after I leave? So I think these are very basic 4 questions we can ask when we want to go out and do something. And that's a really good start. If you can answer this clearly, and I think it's clarify our own romantic idea and projection about helping others. And I think the first step, we, including me very much, need to do. And hoping that TFA will come up with some of the humanitarian support guidelines and principles, not the complicated one, but very simple one, so that everyone can follow that before starting, you know, the humanitarian aid. And it's also in the future, hopefully we can come up with some kind of collective idea how we're gonna raise funds for our humanitarian activity, but for that we need a lot more professional guidelines and our understanding of what aid should look like in terms of TRE. So this is my last slide. So I don't think it is altruism to become engaged in humanitarian work. It is the least one can do. So it is not something special. It's all come from our good intention. And I believe everyone here feel this in TRE. But we just think a little more and be sensitive a little more and prepare a little more before we do something. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Maria.
Thank you so much. I'm still moved by this, and I had seen the presentation before, but I was still very impacted by the way you presented it with such clarity and such intelligence, I would say, and experience also. So when I saw this presentation, I said, everything is in there and there's not much I can add to it. Maybe just share a little bit and briefly some experiences that, in my perception, I would say, are following these guidelines and these principles. So I will not go, this will repeat much of what Sai has already mentioned, and this starts going more in the direction of how we do it, and I think this will be more useful in some other moment. This is one project. David was there in 2011. We trained community leaders in a project that is already sustainable, because when Sai mentions sustainability, and when we think of sustainability, one thing that has been working is if we connect, we articulate with projects that already have the trust of the community and are already sustainable, then we can introduce easily TRE as a tool that then remains after we leave, because the project already has the sustainability there. So this shows a little bit also some of the aspects that were mentioned. Oh, I can't point with the shadow. But we can see them doing TRE in a very culturally sensitive way. They are using some of their own healing resources. These are indigenous,
Push the round circle.
These are indigenous women that are now, many indigenous people in Brazil now live in favelas, which are suburbs, very in difficult situations, and they are traditionally healers in their own traditions, in their own. So they include some of what they already know as a preparation for doing a TRE session with the rest of the community. This has been happening there every Friday morning since 2011. It never stops. And there is a team of community leaders doing it there. And it's in a context where it's also connected to the public health system, because Adalberto, who created the project, is a psychiatrist and a professor at the university and has a connection with the public health system. So it's really well articulated, and it's not something that is isolated from the context where they are working in. Another one I would like to share quickly, this could have been one of these interventions that are inappropriate, because we did a large-scale intervention in Brasilândia with 120 people. If we had done just that and then left, these questions could not have been answered. What stays after we leave? What kind of impact this had? But we chose Brasilândia, which is a suburb in Brasilia, for a good reason. Dr. Marcelo is a medical doctor in the public health system in that community. So we knew that after this, and we announced it to the community, this activity will be held weekly at the health center by Dr. Marcelo, and it's open to all of you. So very quickly, he said, we need to train people. It's packed and I can't handle it just on my own. So we did one training, and now he's training more and more people within the primary healthcare system. And there are more groups happening in that community now that are led by teachers, school teachers, and other community agents. Marcelo will share this experience at some point in the open space. It's a beautiful experience, and he has been doing it there for 7 years. So He has many good things to share. And just to have this, I have been doing this now for 3 to 4 years. It's an NGO that it's a feminist NGO, and it's a huge network in Brazil that is connected to the feminist network internationally. They have meetings. They had a meeting in Salvador with 5,000 women from Kenya, from India, from all over the world, and they deal strongly with the gender issues. So they have all this now spectrum of different kinds of sexualities that I cannot follow how many of them there are now. So, and it is a very challenging context for me to move into and to be able to be with them in the beginning, after we fall in love with each other. But it's a very challenging context, but it works wonderfully as an empowerment. It's taught in the context of self-help and self-care and care amongst activists. So they are certified to do it in that context. They will not advertise workshops in a city open to the general public. But in this context, because they have such a strong bond, such a strong connection between them or among them, it makes it very safe. So when they had these 5,000 women in Salvador, they were offering TRE. The first day they had 12 participants, then they told the others. Second day they had 40. Third day they had 60. They asked them to do more. They were going to do it just once, and they asked them to do it every day. And they brought back pictures and what they heard and what was happening in that context, and wonderful things. And it's very empowering for them because they realize that's one suspicion they have when I go in and I start talking about the nervous system and how you can go back to the baseline and calm down, that they suspect I want to make them more passive and not so. And I am quickly in trouble with it. So I have learned with them to say, this is to make your movement sustainable. If you don't learn to calm down after you face the police and after you scream in all these fights, when you go back home and you don't learn how to calm down and slow down, you get ill. And you begin to have conflicts within your organization. And they all go like that. It's true. So I said, so this is a way to make you stronger, for then you can go and fight with the police or whatever, and with these chauvinists and da. But you need to learn how to take care of yourselves in a good way and take care of each other, because you can't count on someone else to do that. So this has been a very rewarding experience also, and sustainable, empowering, and community empowering. And it's an example of how a community is not necessarily a neighborhood. It can be a huge network. They consider it a family. They are together, and there are survival issues involved. They count on each other in very difficult situations. So these were just some sharing some of the experience we have in